And then Karen will get this on the website afterwards. It's good to have you here. Our book is The Fourfold Way. How many have read that book before?
I have.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Nice. If you don't have it, you can either order it or we'll get through most of it, and I'll try to send out most of the relevant points, at least from my perspective. And it is about the fact that there's more than one way to be able to view life and how we live it. She starts off by talking about the conception that we have of first world countries, second world countries, third world countries. And she introduces a new thing called fourth world countries. Because even our first, second, and third world countries, you know where that began, right? It was when we had the Western world and the Soviet world. And so it was kind of a way of being able to say, hey, we're first world and you're not. All right? As the walls came down, then we had to begin figuring out how to define that differently. And so it became more of an economic thing. You know, first world countries were the most highly industrialized, second world, not quite so much. The third world were the backward spaces. So what are the fourth world? The fourth world are those people who have lived always in more direct connection to the land, to the world that they live in, and less connected to overpowering that land. She says that it this way: the first three worlds believe the land belongs to the people. The fourth world believes the people belong to the land. And it's a different way for us to begin looking at how we relate to one another. So as you introduce yourself, I'm going to give you just a second just to say your name, and I want you to tell me a favorite land space for you.
Okay.
Okay, just any space at all. So I'll just call you one at a time. So Doug, introduce yourself and tell us one of your favorite spaces.
I'm Doug, and right where I am now.
All right, good. Paula?
Hi, I'm Paula. I have to say the Saguaro National Park.
Very good. Sarah? Don't forget to unmute.
Now
There you
can
go.
you hear?
Yes.
I'm still Sarah, and one of my favorite spaces is by the ocean.
Jade?
Oh, I like the land around my home where I live.
It's nice to have that around your home where you can just feel that connection beyond just yourself. Nancy?
Yes, I'm Nancy, and this is Sassy, my dog.
Hi, Sassy.
I'd have to say Sabino Canyon, but I also love Mount Rainier, and I love the Grand Tetons, the Snake River.
All right.
Hey, you.
Any national park.
That's one of the nice things about the national parks is they set those spaces aside because they were so sacred, so special. Garnet?
Garnet's muted.
I'm unmuted now. So this is Garnet, and I love looking at the special lighting on the Catalinas.
Nice, nice. Mike and Mary?
Well, I miss a place in Rockford, Illinois called the Anderson Gardens, which is a Japanese gardens. Mary and I spent months every morning reflecting and meditating.
Nice. Mary?
I'm with Nancy Wilkinson about the Sabino Canyon. I really love it there. And also with art. Any national park will do, whether it's Appalachian or Cascade.
Laura?
Door County, Wisconsin. It's the peninsula that juts out into Lake Michigan.
All right, nice. Is that where you're from?
Yeah, well, I'm from Wisconsin, so just south of there.
Okay, nice. Meg?
Probably the Pacific Northwest coast.
Very good. I've never been up that high up that direction. I've only gone up to Northern California, so I'd love to get there.
Oh,
sometime. Good. Sue?
I like my healing garden back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. And the other special place I have is Ghost Ranch and all the area around there.
Nice. Olive, but I think that's Dan.
Well, I was with Olive today at Catalina State Park. That would be one of my favorite places, playing in the water and looking at the wildflowers.
Nice. Very nice. Joyce?
My backyard is the best.
Nice.
Also another place in Wisconsin, the Driftless area west of the Madison area.
Nice.
Between
Thank you.
Madison and the state line.
Good. Judy?
Redwoods in California.
Oh, those are gorgeous, aren't they?
Yes.
Margie? She might be muted.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was gonna say Saguaro East.
That's nice, isn't it?
I go there more than any of the other, I love all the other parks around, but that's the one I go to the most because it's closest, so.
One of my favorite spots is in a space where there's a whole lot of favorite spots. It's on the island of Maui, where my mother-in-law lived for decades, and we'd go and visit. And I'd go to the center of the island, and it's a place called Iao State Park. It's a needle that's there, and there's just such a sense of power in that space. It's just, so I just sit there and just rest in the midst of it. So. One of the things about that connection to the land that we forget on a regular basis is that it has power that we can't control. We try to think that we can control everything, but the land teaches us otherwise. Weather teaches us otherwise, right? We try to
Teaches otherwise.
Yeah. We try to put a road up the mountain, but the mountain is always stronger. And the mountains above the mountains, those clouds, are even harder for us to control, aren't they? As much as we've tried. And yet, a core of this book is that part of our job is to become change agents. She quotes Starhawk by saying, "Directed energy causes change. To have integrity, we must recognize that our choices bring consequences and that we cannot escape responsibility for the consequences, not because they are imposed by some external authority, but because they are inherent within the choices themselves." So in some ways, the words "become a change agent" is a misnomer, because we are all change agents at each moment. It's whether or not that's a positive or a negative change. In each moment, how are we going to redefine ourselves in the positive side rather than in the negative side? So over your lifetime, what choices have you seen, either that you've made or that someone else has made? Now be careful, because it's always easier to pick on someone else, right? It's always easier to say how their choices have had bad consequences. So if you can keep it closer to something that you've had an effect on, it'll be more relevant. How is it that you've seen the choices of life affect this world, in good ways or bad ways?
I can think of one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still getting used to the fact that we can hear and see each other.
Kind of nice, especially when we've been separated for a while.
It's like, is this real? When I was in seminary in the 80s, I used to like to go dance out on the grass in my bare feet under the full moon and beat drums and howl. Well, Andover Newton Theological School now has a whole dance department inside. It's been my howling at the moon and dancing in my bare feet has created a dance department.
Nice. Very good.
Mm.
Where else have you sensed that consequences coming because of actions? Meg.
I think when I chose, when the church that I belonged to in Wilmette adopted a family from the south side of Chicago, and I chose to be one of the people that would help to mentor one of the 7 children that were involved in that family. And Darrell has gone on to be one of the more successful members of his family. He's stayed out of trouble and been employed. He's, let's see, he's about 29 now, and I was with him for 9 years.
Wow.
Who else?
Jim, when I was working as a staff nurse in the 1990s, and the Masters of Business Administration guys came in and took over hospitals, this was happening everywhere in the country. They were cutting staffing, and I was in charge of orienting new nurses. And they wanted me to release them to practice independently on the floor without supervision. And I spoke up against it, and I was fired. So none of the nurses said anything to me. One of the respiratory therapists did say to me that they thought I was very courageous. But I don't know that I did anything for, I mean, the Masters of Business, they're still in power and they make incredible salaries. But I did want to become a nurse practitioner, and I got a lawyer. I got my job back for, I forget, 3 months, but they harassed me the whole time and told me I, only had so much time. But it helped me, helped me financially, and I ended up not working at all because I couldn't get a job that I wanted, and that was a real step in courage, instead of just taking anything. And I found the perfect job that set me on my path toward my goal, which was to go back to graduate school and become a nurse practitioner.
Nice.
And what I can't say anything good happened to staffing in that particular hospital, but I did find out years later the woman who was the director was charged with, I don't know, fraud or felony or one of those crimes. And when she went to work with another hospital. So, and I feel like as a nurse practitioner, I was able to, I had so much more autonomy, and I was able to use a lot of the tools that I had in my toolbox of working with people who are trying to recover from alcoholism, occasionally prayed with people, really did a lot of education. And I'll just kind of go on and on, because right now I've been retired for 8 years and I really don't know what my path is so much. I've been praying about it for years, haven't found it yet. So I'm very much looking forward to the class and the opportunity to see some familiar faces from faraway Maryland.
And I'm glad you're calling from Maryland. I just realized that I didn't give you a chance to give your Earth space.
I think I was really introduced to the Earth when I was living in upstate New York and did camping and hiking in the Adirondacks. And then I got to live on the eastern shore of Maryland with eagles and ospreys and Canada geese and all of that. And then Tucson. So it would be depending on what day. Like it's cold and windy here and the wind chill is about 40. So like Tucson is my favorite today,
it's almost cold and windy and 20 degrees here too.
Yeah, right.
Almost.
Okay.
It's 87.
I want to take us just a little bit different, because we've had some great stories of how you've positively affected your space. Now let's kind of blame ourselves a bit. Where is it that you feel like you moved through your world at some point or another, and now you look back and you go, wow, I wish I hadn't been, because you see the negative effects of what happened because of that. And maybe you've gone back and you've tried to repair some of that damage. Um,
Well, this is Mary. I'd like to respond to that, Jim.
yes.
It's always, sometimes it's easier to respond to the negative than it is to the positive. But I'm sad that I didn't stand up enough. I stood up enough to be labeled when I was in seminary, and watch out. They said you have a target on your back because you're a feminist, and it was clear then. But there have been encounters I've had that have been very, very unpleasant, and I didn't stand up for myself and for women and for the God as I know her.
And that's hard to do, though, when all the rest of the story says something different.
Yep.
To stand in that space of real strength means that well, either you get shut up a little bit, and maybe you still speak louder than what they want, but it feels like shutting up to you, or you speak so loud that you sometimes don't listen too. It's hard to find that right space in a time like that because there's so much wrongly directed energy the other way. So thank you for sharing that. Who else has space like that? Part of mine is when I went down to Argentina when I was 19 years old, Mormon missionary. So of course I had all the right answers, right? All the perfect answers to fix everything. And not just about religion, about all the other things that we as Americans are right about, right? And it's really easy to go into those types of spaces and not allow them to change you as much as you try to change them. And that's rarely as good of a space as what we think it is.
That's interesting. The positive thing, and I never really latched onto, I got the negative out, but was the time I spent studying on the Sioux reservations in the Dakotas. The time that I spent in class with a very wonderful, brilliant French Huguenot instructor. She was ordained in the Presbyterian Church eventually here in the United States. But her experiences included being in prison during apartheid and having her back broken and cameras on her 24/7. She was a damaged person from that perspective, but it was an incredible experience for me because I honestly did not know that the native indigenous peoples in this country were still treated like they were in the 18th century. I mean, I'm so naive. And so for me, that was a really eye-opening experience, which I enjoy sharing.
Thank you. We're going to get back to some of those eye-opening experiences in a little bit because that's important. So go ahead, Nancy.
Mary reminded me of my saying yes to going to South Africa. I studied on a Fulbright, the 10-year anniversary after apartheid. And my project, because y'all had to have a project, was to make a video of about 13 different interviews of people's lives, or interviews, talking about their lives, what it was like since apartheid had been abolished. And I talked to people that were young and old and white and black and Afrikaners, and it was really great because the video I took home and with help had it edited and music added and so forth, and then it was used in other places besides my own school. So I felt good about saying yes, and usually I've found in my life saying yes to travel has really enriched my life. And it is very eye-opening and a little bit, it takes away the naive views that you have about people. And that just keeps happening more and more. You just realize how little you know about people, and yet at the same time how much they are a lot like us. And I guess that's part of the learning experience too. And I think that's true what's happening right now. There is a leveling of, there is no rich or poor, or it's like we're all in this together, and it's a community that's been formed by this virus. And I wonder, how is this going to play out? And so anyway, that's that.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Thank you. How else have you struggled and sometimes been a failure in these areas where you haven't quite brought the best consequences?
Are you asking that to everybody?
Everyone, anybody.
Okay, good.
Been a failure.
Just the places where your actions have brought the negative consequences. Maybe you didn't recognize it even at the time, because all of us emerge out of spaces. Especially, here's what I've learned about our first world, rich, powerful, educated. All those things that are good about where we have grown up also cause it so that when we move to spaces like Pucallpa, where Nancy and I have been, we can go and use that as a bludgeoning. We know the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't even consider that it's different. Let me tell you a story about that. I have a really good friend of mine named Alan. Alan and I went down to South America together 5 or 6 times. He's a building inspector in the Phoenix area. He knows how to build. And the first trip we took, we went to Ecuador, and we're working on this church, and we're putting a roof on the building. And he was frustrated because he knew better ways to do it. And specifically, he was frustrated because he had one boss in the morning that would tell him one thing, and another boss in the afternoon that would tell him another thing. Right? And so they weren't quite on the same page. And so I just want him to tell me one thing. Why do I need 2 people? And we went to the pastor, and he said, I don't really need to pay 2 bosses, but both of them need jobs for their families.
Ah.
You see, he was working out of a different space than what Alan was. Alan was looking at efficiency and about how to do building right, and he was looking at relationship and about how to help each of those families. And so from one perspective, his actions weren't wrong, but from the perspective the pastor was using, they were wrong.
Now I understand that analogy of one person coming from one perspective and another person coming from another perspective is meaningful for me in how things can go wrong, because we might be speaking different languages.
That's right. And we're going to get to that, because that's the essence of this book, is different languages and what somebody may be speaking that you just don't understand.
Right.
So maybe it's time for that eye-opening question. What are some of the things where, as you went through your life, somebody said something, did something, reacted to you in some way that suddenly it opened up a new world to you and said, oh, I get it now. Okay, so here's mine. It's kind of a funny little thing. When I first started teaching bilingual kids, I was in this school called William C. Jack, and we had these little tiny bathrooms that were about as big as my laptop computer. They were tiny little things. And I'd go in there sometimes at the end of the day. I had just first graders, and I'd find little squares of crumpled up things of used toilet paper stuck in the wall, and there was an electrical conduit or a pipe that was there, and they were stuck on the edge of that. And I go, well, what are they doing here? What? They're just sticking their used toilet paper on the walls. And see, it's because in their countries, where most of them had come from somewhere, and definitely had come with parents who came from somewhere. And in those countries, you don't flush your toilet paper. You put it in a receptacle. And I didn't have a receptacle for it. And suddenly I had to think differently, not because my idea was wrong. They should flush the toilet paper in America, but I had to approach it differently. I had to have different expectations of who they were and what their experience was. So suddenly eyes opened and I became more. How about you? What opened your eyes at some point or another?
Well, for me, one of the things that opened my eyes was to join Chrysalis at St. Francis and learn the 4 principles that they have there. There are 4 of them, but the 4th one is the one that really helped me. And the 4th one is be open to outcome, not attached to outcome.
You're getting way ahead of us, Mike, but go ahead and keep going.
Well, that's the one. And there's another one that when I signed up to be a Stephen minister, the way that played out was so simple. And I was with a man who was desperately lonely and very sick. And I spent 1 day a week with that guy for almost 8 years. And he finally died, and he and I were the best of friends and holding each other together.
Nice, nice. You know, and the way that you often learn those principles is because you need them in the situation, the relationship, the space that you're in. And beforehand, it wasn't as important for whatever reason. How about the rest of you? Where did you have your eyes opened?
Well, when I was 15, I came here with my church, Emmanuel Lutheran Church in North Hollywood, and we worked on the Navajo reservation, and I had first graders, and they were Navajo speaking, and I had a translator, and boy, that was eye-opening because I had never, worked with people that didn't speak English, let alone these folks that, we'd go out and pick them up from their homes and bring them to the mission.
Yeah.
So that was my very first experience teaching. And it's ironic that I would come back to Arizona and end up my career here too.
Yeah.
But it was an eye-opening experience.
The hard part about that, Nancy, is we just assume that everyone we meet has seen all the same things we have all the same benefits. It's too easy to just assume all of that. And so sometimes you have to step beyond just to know that it's not quite. I loved taking our youth, as I loved taking youth from Yuma, just south of the border there. It's less than an hour drive from Yuma to the far side of San Luis, maybe 45 minutes. And yet the whole world changes as you cross the border and you go to the poor side of San Luis and you see a whole different side of life. And that quickly, life can change if we choose to step into that space.
This is Paula. What comes to my mind is in 1984, I had an opportunity to do some work with a fledgling organization that was working on this problem called GRID at the time, which later became AIDS. And it was my introduction to that epidemic, to the people affected. And I remember most in the work that I did with them that day, we were doing organizational development, helping them think about their board of directors and all of that. When one of the people sitting at the table told a story of a dinner party that he had been to a couple of nights before, revealing that he was HIV positive and how he had gone to the friends' home for dinner, and there were all these people gathered there. It was very festive. The table was set with the most beautiful flowers and crystal and china. And when they sat down to dinner, he looked down and he had a paper plate and a plastic fork and knife and a paper cup, and talked about how that felt at the time. And for me, that just opened up a lot of feeling, and actually changed my life because
Nice.
I then ended up working for 12 years solely on the AIDS epidemic. So that conversation and his willingness to share that story and how he felt was so life-changing for me.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Because the AIDS epidemic is a really good way for us to view what we sometimes do. Because that was a space where so many people said, I don't care that it hurts you. I don't care that it matters to you. I don't, and we had a whole lot of shutting ourselves in our own little worlds. But then there were other people who wonderfully opened their hearts. So thank you for being one of those who did that.
I was thinking about the Arizona School for the Deaf and Blind here in Tucson and how they made an impression on me starting about 25 years ago. I thought that people who were without hearing were quiet and well behaved. And I went into their community and I found out that they slam books on the floor to get people's attention. They flick lights off and on. They yell in garbled voices across the quad, which could sound like an elephant roaring to those of us who can hear. I saw lots of people running up to each other, jumping in each other's arms, patting each other on the back. And during concerts at the School for the Deaf and Blind, yes, they give yearly concerts, rock concerts, which I had no idea how people who were deaf or blind could do rock. And they'd have these big speakers on the stage and they'd be sitting on top of the speakers so they could feel the vibration while playing guitar. People who were without hearing playing guitar blew me away. And a simple thing that really stays in my heart is that during concerts, they blow up balloons and send them out to the audience and want them passed around. So if you're in a deaf community and there is sound around you, if you hold on to the balloon, you can feel vibration. So it was a whole cultural experience learning from these very empowered students who love being deaf.
Right. And didn't see it as the negative that we see it as.
Oh no, they thought it was wonderful.
Yeah. The hard part is that when we go into some situation with everything already figured out, then really we are the ones that are handicapped, if I can say it that way, because we're not using some of who we are. But we think we are, because we're holding on to this is everything that there is. And so we end up not listening with our ears because we're busy using some other sense, or we end up not speaking without our voice because we're used to using it. And at least part of what this class is all about is about learning to hear larger than what we do. The author calls that listening to our oldest selves, listening beyond just whatever is happening right in this moment, but to that which is bigger about us, and trying to hear that largest story, not just my story, but our story, and trying to hear that. And so she has the 4 different inner archetypes that she talks about, blueprints for human behavior. So I'm going to put those on the screen for you. Hold on just a second. Somewhere right here. So they're right here in the center of your screen. Let me make them a little bit larger here. Okay. So here's the key to what we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks. The first archetype is the warrior. And as I go through these, I want you to kind of think how this speaks you. And we'll go back through and we'll say, how does the warrior speak you? How does the healer speak you? But listen to all four of them, first of all. The warrior, you show up or choose to be present. And it holds on to the human resources of power, presence, and communication. The healer pays attention to what has heart and meaning and uses the human resources of love, gratitude, acknowledgement, and whatever is underneath this, validation. Excuse me. And the visionary tells the truth without blame or judgment, and it's a non-judgmental truthfulness that maintains our authenticity and develops our inner vision and intuition. Or the teacher, be open to outcome, not attached to outcome, and uses their human resources of wisdom and objectivity. That's the one Mike said that he liked. So we're going to start with the number 4, the teacher. When you hear those words, be open to outcome and not attached to outcome, how many of you have that a resonance in you? And how many kind of struggle with that? How many like to be in control of outcome? How many feel that in you?
But Jim, that's
Well,
one of the
I'm here in oh, go ahead.
Go ahead,
One of the
Marilyn.
things that distresses me about the way our education system has evolved is that we're being forced to do outcome and evaluate ourselves and our children by the outcomes of things, like standardized testing.
Yes.
And it's not good. It's not healthy. It's not productive even.
Yes.
I don't know how to fight against it other than to just keep saying it's wrong.
Sure. But that's because somebody is coming actually from a different type of space and they're trying to change that teacher. They're trying to make it, to be that true teacher, you have to know that you're not the director so much as the learner. And if I want to be the director, maybe I have one of those other archetypes that is more important to me, and I need to recognize that and not try to force my mode into whatever that is.
Well, here's where I come on that one.
Yes.
Is that if I have expectations about the outcome, that is going to result in premeditated resentment because I don't get I don't see the expectation I expected. I don't see the outcome that I expected. If I'm attached to that outcome and it doesn't materialize in some way or another, then I'm going to be resentful. The expectation creates resentment.
It can.
Or it opens the door for the possibility of resentment.
Yeah. Who else either resonates or struggles with the teacher? Be open to outcome, not attached to outcome.
Well, this is Melanie, and I came to Maryland, just, the short word of it is family. And then, on the heels of the virus, because I'm a nurse, I was seeing where this was going in February, but I made the decision before. And we came across the country with the virus on our heels, I think. Anyway, I'm here, and it was my expectation of getting connected with another spiritual community, sharing time. I've had phone calls, but over the years, but actual face-to-face time with friends, especially a friend who has stage 4 cancer and can't do any of those things. So there were many things afoot at Tucson that let me know it was time to leave. But here I am. I don't know what I'm doing here, partly. But a still small voice just keeps reassuring me that, you're fine, be here. And so I am. So, I mean, I'm totally powerless against what's happening with the virus. I won't say that, totally powerless. I could go walk around and talk to people and they would run away from me. So, yeah, it's a very big time of going inward, which is not the traditional thing you do in spring. Spring being very obvious here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could I ask a question
Yes.
for you, Marilyn? What about that kirtan group that you were talking about? And I want to get on it. What is that?
Oh, well, this is where I lived in Albuquerque for a couple of years. And there's a fellow who mostly does Sufi dancing, but he's learned the harmonium since I left. And my name was still on a listserv, and I got with them. So I guess if you go to Meetup in Albuquerque and look for the name Forrest, well, that's his first name. How many people are named Forrest? And it might say Kirtan. Hanuman. You know who Hanuman is?
I do.
Yeah. Okay. So look up Hanuman as a keyword also. And maybe you could get your name on that list.
Right.
But there's a group in Northwest Tucson, and they're with the Global Chant group, and they're my favorite. There's several around the city. But the one at Northwest, up La Cañada past McGee meets, well, if you go to globalchant.com, you'll find that one in Northwest Tucson, and they are on Mondays.
Okay, thank you.
So it's a little different slant, but both wonderful.
All right, so I'm going to go to the other three things. The visionary, tell the truth without blame or judgment. How many feel yourself resonating with that and why? Tell the truth without blame or judgment.
Well, it takes a constant reminder. One of the things that's going on in our world right now is we want to hold somebody responsible for things the way they are.
Yeah.
And so we go around blaming everybody or trying to dream up, there's no progress in that. And that's just stymieing and making everybody unhappy.
Well, and the prophetic voice, which is what the visionary is, that which is speaking a truth, is hard sometimes for people to hear. But if you're doing it in a biting way, it becomes not just hard to hear, but a negative experience for that person. Because of you, not because of the voice itself.
Well, it's how you choose your wording.
That's right.
And how you go into a situation with if you, like Mary said, if you go in there with expectations, you're going to have all kinds of problems.
If you're attached.
Yeah.
If you're attached to the outcome, and if you're going to tell the truth the way you see it, it's a big opening to hear the other person's, and without blaming them for being wrong. Is that a yawn or a gasp there, Art?
I always gasp when Mike speaks. How about you, Art?
He says mute and he's not paying attention.
All right, so the healer is the one who pays attention to what has heart and meaning. How many resonate to that and think that might be one of your strengths? Why?
No, it's not. Raise her hand.
Oh, this is Garnet.
Good.
I don't consider myself a healer, and I consider myself a healer. I consider myself allowing in my profession as a massage therapist to listen with my hands and address the needs of a person. And sometimes I listen with my ears, and I know that makes a change in them, and therefore it brings a change to me.
And just know that when I say how many feel this is just first impression type of thing. As we go deeper into it, you'll find ways that you either resonate more, or that you find the things that help you to know what that's more about, or how you move away from it. So it's not that you have to say, oh, I am this. In fact, most of the wisdom around this, most of Angela Zarian's wisdom is that you have to not just grasp hold of one and move that direction. You have to figure out how to take and balance these 4 different things and figure out which of each of them to use. Right? Maybe one of them is more you, but you don't want to just have just that in you. So when we go to the warrior, which just the word right there, you know, is a little hard for me to listen to. I don't want to be the warrior, but listen what it says. Show up or choose to be present. That's the key to that. How many resonate to that?
Yeah.
How do you resonate?
Well, of course I do, because of Chrysalis.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first principle. Nothing happens unless we show up. We show up physically, spiritually, mentally, and all the ways we bring ourselves to the table of life. And that's critical. If we don't walk into the garden, we'll never see the flowers.
Oh, very good. Well, that kind of applies to a minister, right, Jim?
It
If
does.
you don't show up, nothing happens.
That's exactly right. In fact, in seminary, they kind of told you, in some ways, the most important thing you do is be there.
Mm-hmm.
Now we think the most important thing is I'm bringing all this really great information, or I'm with, and in a very real way, it's true that the most important thing you do is be present, and ready for whatever is there.
There was a young woman who phoned me today. I've been counseling with her. It's long distance counseling, kind of conversation, I call it, really. And I have no attachment to her other than the fact while I was back in Woodstock, she didn't attend the church, but her parents did. Her birthday was today, 31 years old, and she's kind of lost. She was kind of lost when we began our conversations. And for some reason, she said, I find you easy to be with and to talk with. Maybe that's because I listened. I think that's a big part of what a job that a minister or a healer does, as you were talking about, Garnett. You listen to people as you're doing the massage. Their body tells you things. Their voice tells you things. If you pay attention, if you just pay attention, it's called be awake. Choose to be present for that person at that moment.
So as we go through the next little while, we're going to go, the plan is a week on each one of these. So we'll look at the warrior for a week. We'll look at the healer for a week. We'll look at the visionary and the teacher each for a week.
Good.
And I want you to ask yourself a couple of different questions. How do you consider this thing to be you? You know, what are the strengths of this that can help you in your life? Doesn't mean that you adopt the whole thing. There are things that you say, I'm not that as easily or as well. That's somebody else's gift. But you want to find what it is that helps with this. And then how does it incorporate with those other things that we're going to talk about? And so that you become the strongest possible person that you can be. Going back to where we started, she talked about the different worlds, first world countries, second world countries. And when they started, it was very much let's separate ourselves, Eastern world from Western world. Let's make sure we're not that kind of country. When we began to do it economically, we sure wanted to make sure we weren't those third world countries or even second world countries, right? But the reality is that my best moments have often been when I bridged the gap between worlds. When I went down to Argentina, and it changed me at 19. As I go to Peru, and I see Victor, who is almost exactly my age, but his life and my life, the ways that they've played out have been very different. But who he is has changed who I am, because he brings in strengths that I don't have, and it's helped me to find stuff in myself that I didn't have from my perspective. That's what you want to figure out, is how do you take from that other world that's not maybe your native tongue, so to speak, What can you learn? What can you become because of that? You also have to look at what are the ways that your personality plays out negatively in each of those things. How is it that it might, if you're trying to use it, that you would be more of a hammer when a screwdriver is needed, right? And so you have to figure out where is it that you might use the different modes in a non-helpful way or in a negative way to somebody. And as we do that, hopefully we all become fuller, better members of the communities that we're in.
Can I just say,
Yes.
Jim? Well, I enjoy this format because we get to talk with people and learn about them, that things I never knew before. And, you know, we go to church and we worship together, but I don't know people's backgrounds and they don't know mine. And there's not really the opportunity over coffee and brownies. But I did want to say two things to you directly, Jim Wilbank. One is when I had that awful fall and ended up in the hospital, and you came and visited me when I was sick, you showed up. I don't remember what you said or anything, but I was so touched that you would come and see me. That really meant so much to me. And, you know, you really walked the talk when we were in Peru together. You were just heave-hoeing all of those big old pieces of luggage with all of the educational and medical stuff in there. And I thought, dang, this guy is going for it here. And you really inspired the rest of us to do the same. So I know you look at Victor and you maybe model after or want to take on his good attributes, but that goes for you too, Pastor.
But see, that's the thing. We all need to be each other's heroes. Victor is my hero because of so much that he's taught me. But each of us get to do that for each other, because whatever attributes we have, whichever ones of these we gravitate towards, it might be exactly what somebody else needs to fill up the deficits, the places where they struggle. And none of us is the top of the game in all four of these areas. We all need something of the other person that brings in the other attributes. So that's a lot of what we're going to talk about. Does it sound good?
Yep.
If you'd like to see this sheet of paper that I'm kind of working off of, I can send you a copy of that. If you will, in the chat area, just put your email address. So if you go down to the bottom of your screen, or if you're on an iPad or something, to the top right, there'll be a button that looks like a cartoon speak button, and it says chat underneath it, and you click on that and something will pop up and you just type in your email address. I'll cut and paste that and send this to you. Okay? So stay as long as you need to just talk to each other, all right?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
M-A-R.
Bye.
Thank you all. Have a good week.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah, you all have a great week.
Stay well.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I'm gonna put yours on.
Send it to you.
Okay. Hit file or something. I don't know what. Yeah,
There it is. Okay.
All right, up to the. Yeah.
You finding it?
Yeah. I found out how to put it in, but then do you hit file in order to send it?
No,
to
you just, yeah, no,
I mean,
just,
I've written
push
my name in my, how do I
just push
submit
return
it?
and it will come to, it will come up on the screen, and then I will cut and paste it out of there, and I'll have everyone's email addresses.
Are you done?
Yeah.
So Jim, I did the email, got my name in there, but when I clicked on participants, I'm not showing up. So is there something I have to do for that?
What you have, Melanie, is yours says iPhone. That's what you're called. And so what you do is you can click, I think it's a right click on yourself, or and you can rename yourself.
Okay.
If
Oh,
that makes
there it
sense.
is. Yeah, yeah. How about that? Gosh, I'm really learning something. This is exciting.
You know, the thing about Zoom is that we're all learning. It's kind of new for all of us.
Well, this is really much more high tech than that Zoom that I'm doing with the Threshold Choir and the Albuquerque thing. But okay, well, there I am. All right, thanks. Be blessed, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Melanie. Take care. Have fun in the cold.
Woo!
Know that we don't envy you for the cold.
Yeah, I know. Thanks.
Sorry. I'd like to say we do, but it's just not true.
Yeah. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I still haven't figured out how to get this up to the list.
Okay.
Mine's
You've typed it.
not-
You've typed in the message area. You've typed your stuff.
I have
Then just push return.
on my computer,
Uh-huh.
and I just get a little bunk. I don't get doesn't go anywhere.
Let me
It
see.
gets I hear a noise, but it hasn't gone up there. So
Okay. All right.
anyway, you know my email address.
All right. Let me try. Tell me what it is.
That says Meg Pradelt, mpradelt@icloud.com.
Just Pradelt.
Pradelt@icloud.com.
Let me make sure that I got it. I'm gonna push return. Oops, I need to do this. Did that come up right?
It did.
All right. So I've got it now.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay. I'll put
Jim,
all
I
these.
got mine in, but it won't send, so.
Same thing.
This is okay. Look and see, Judy. Here's what I tried pushing mine once, and it was because I had it sending to just one person or something. Make sure where it says to, does it say to everyone?
Yeah.
You see where I'm saying?
Oh,
Right
now it
above where you
does.
just typed in.
Now it does.
Yeah, now I got you.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
I will get all these in and I will send it to people.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Jim.
Thank you. We'll see you.
thank you, bud.
My pleasure. Judy, how are you? Other Judy here. I didn't get to talk to you much. You doing okay?
Which Judy?
The other
Judy
Judy
West.
West right there.
Oh, me. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, okay. I'm in constant isolation. Well, not isolation, but for health issues and stuff, I just haven't been able to get much past my apartments. But I have a nice little community in here, and I have Ginger, and I
Yes.
read a
I was
lot.
going to ask about Ginger because, you know, she's one of my favorite parts of you. There she is.
Where are you, Ginger? There you are. There you are, little girl. Yeah, she's here with me. She had a bath today.
Yeah. Good.
But sometime maybe I'll talk some about health and how that impacts my life.
It's huge, isn't it?
Yes.
But especially when we're in relatively good health, we find it easy to not have to think about health.
Well, as someone who's had health issues most of my life, I've been in remission for like 20 some years at a time. But when it comes on, it can also stay with me for like 10 years.
Yes.
I've learned surrender. I've learned healing. I've learned all that stuff. And mainly it's learning how to go into myself and find what I need within myself and what I need from the world.
Yeah. You know, the hard part is trying to value that learning. You know what I'm saying? Because that doesn't come as simple and yay, I like that kind of learning very easily.
No, but the pain I'm in, if I don't pace myself, then I'm in extreme pain. So I've learned what my limits are and it's hard because sometimes I feel like my life is so closed that, but then I've had so many experiences in life in the past that I draw on that. It's hard to explain. I just sometimes I feel like sitting and just crying, but I don't very much. Usually I'm not depressed because I've learned how to take care of myself, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. But I think that's what you've got to do. And you have to do it in a way that isn't judgmental either about yourself or about other people. It just has to be the truth of here's where you're at.
Well, I'm in a community of people with autoimmune diseases like mine. And
you're not still right up the mountain here, are you? Where are you
I'm
at?
still Hills Apartments.
Okay.
I'm right up the road.
Yeah.
And it's like mornings are the hardest for me, so that's why I haven't been able to come to church. Plus, I don't drive. And it's also though by isolating myself this past year, it's the first year in like 8 years that I haven't had pneumonia.
Really?
Wow. I get a cold and it goes right to pneumonia.
Yeah.
So by doing this, I've like, by not going to church, essentially, I kept myself from getting pneumonia this year. So it's
Which
very
is nice.
strange world.
Yeah.
But it's like the world of people who are in chronic illnesses, it's a different world we inhabit than those who are well.
Yeah.
And it's a whole different paradigm of life. And it's impossible really sometimes, I don't talk too much about it because it's impossible almost to explain to someone who is healthy what the world of someone who isn't healthy is and how you make your life worthwhile and meaningful.
Yeah, because we can pretend when we have relatively good health that that's not important, right? We can live in that fantasy world of I don't have to worry about it, but we all have to worry about our health, just not as much maybe as someone else does, and so we act like it's not, but it is.
Yeah,
it always is.
So thanks for listening.
All right, my friend, just know that you've been on my heart on and off through the time. So just know if you ever need to talk, you just call me up.
I might do that sometime. I thought about sometimes trying to get over to Einstein's on a Thursday. Of course, not now, but in the past. But it's just always hard to walk over there and stuff. So it's just real. I wouldn't mind having someone come in and. I thought, if someone could come in and play cards or something or do something here, but I have people in the community here. I mean, I'm not isolated.
Yeah.
But it's isolation it is isolating, but it's not totally isolation. I love the apartments I live in.
That's good. And I know that Kate lives right there too, and she loves them as well. So
yes. A great place to live.
Yeah, I think that you're in a good space.
Yes,
so,
I am.
All right, my friend, take care of you.
Okay, I will, and you too. Be safe.
Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So how do I, leave meeting?
There's a leave meeting tab.
I'm learning.
Yep, we all are.
I mean, I FaceTime with my grandkids all the time, but
which is kind of cool that we can do that, isn't it?
Oh, it's wondrous.
One of the things that I thought about today that I didn't speak up, but it's a great thing. My friend Victor down in Peru, all of this technology has allowed them to step forward much quicker because they didn't have to tear down phone lines in order to they just put up cell phone towers. And so all of a sudden they are much closer to us technology wise because of this change. And I think that's great. Our kids are profiting from that a lot.
Yes.
So, all right, take care.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.